The following podcast contains spoilers, adult language, and some themes and storylines we have most definitely seen before. Oh, and some really bad French.
Ha ha! This is a message from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Due to the recent crisis, we ask that you remain in your homes. Do not attempt to communicate or interact with the creatures, even if they are people you know.
Lock your doors. Bar your windows. The dead are coming. It's time for Aim for the Head, an all Walking Dead universe podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Dianna and Steve.
Hi, and welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I'm Dianna.
And I'm Steve. Bonjour.
And this is podcast episode 299.
That's right. We are almost to the 300th episode.
We are. And on the 300th episode, we will turn French, yes! No,
we will have
awful.
French wine and French bread and French fries.
And to drink, Peru.
Oh boy.
This is
never
hard.
gets old.
It does not. It will never. I feel like we have to put the disclaimer within the disclaimer every week. And yes, really bad French, but we don't want to offend any people who actually speak French. So don't mind us while we mock your culture. We don't mean to. We're just dumb Americans. So
that's right. We are just stupid Americans.
Stupid Americans. That's us. This week, we're going to be discussing episode 2 of Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon. The title of this episode is Alouette. In French, that means lark. And it can also mean singing bird, is what I saw, because the whole Alouette song.
Well, it's like we joked about last week, because I remember I brought that song up as well. That's what Alouette does from, and you know, you went, oh yeah, and so you know they brought it right into the episode, because that's what the two sisters would sing to calm them, or the mom would sing to calm them down or whatever. So I'm like,
yeah, and it's because a lark is a sort of singing bird. The whole song is and it just like it follows like a simple like sort of sing-songy pattern, and that's why that's what that word means. So, there you go.
It's a very kid friendly song.
Yeah,
you know?
absolutely.
So you imagine that like little French school kids learn that song in first grade. Probably.
Yes. It's their version of row your boat, as it were.
There you go. That's right.
So episode 2, Alouette. Quick thoughts on the episode. I went first last week, so this week, Steve, it's your turn. What were your thoughts on Alouette?
All right. Well, I think my thoughts are going to be very similar to my thoughts for last week, which is I enjoyed it. I thought there was some parts that were really great. Mm-hmm. And, you know, obviously we'll get into it with our top moments and stuff. And there was a couple of moments where I kind of was like, really? You know, I mean, I would imagine, and we haven't really, we talked a little bit about this before we started, so we kind of have some idea of what we, you know, you know a little bit what I think, and I know a little bit what you think. And I have a feeling that a lot of the high points that I have are your high points, and a lot of the really are kind of your really moments. So it's going to be a lot of I agree. So, but yeah, overall, I you know, again, it was very entertaining. It was very long, which I know we'll get into a little bit. That the first 2 episodes were both on AMC Plus. They're both over an hour each, and that's a lot. You know, then AMC Plus, there are no commercials, so that's an hour, and that's including maybe a minute at the end for scenes for next week and the credits. So you're talking at least 59 to 60 minutes of actual content. So that's a lot. So, but again, I enjoyed it. I think that there are things they could have not done that I would have liked better if they had not done them. But there were some moments and some things that happened in there that I thought was really great. What about you? What'd you think?
I agree. I think this was I thought it was a good sort of natural build on last week. And, you know, movement character arc, things like that. They are actually traveling, so there's there's actual movement and sort of like non-literal movement. But again, agreeing with you, there are some nits that we picked. We were texting about them yesterday, and there's some moments that me as well. I was really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they vary. In what made me react that way. Writing, situation, acting choices, you name it. So there was a mixed bag in certain areas, but there were some things that they got right, that they got really, really right. There were some really, really great scenes. There's some really, really great action. So I'm right there with you. There's room for more growth too, which is always a positive. I feel like they're moving in the right direction. I feel like this week was better than last week, and they've got some things to sort of build on and fix. So I'm hopeful that next week will be even better, sort of move toward like that, the greatness of the main series, as it were. But yeah, I liked it. Again, I didn't love it, but I did like it, and I liked more than I didn't like. So it's overall a net positive, I suppose, if you put it that way. So yeah, so that's episode 2 for me.
All right. We'll see you next week for episode 3.
All right, that's it, everybody. Stay tuned for our football discussion.
That's right.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Sports ball.
Sports ball. We're going to get into our top moments in just a moment here. But before we do, let's remind our listeners just a little bit about what we were supposed to expect in this episode with the episode description. So, Steve, why don't you take care of that, and then we will move right along.
All right. Well, this again is episode 1.2 of The Walking Dead, Daryl Dixon. The episode is entitled Alouette. Chante Alouette. And the description we have is as follows. Daryl, Isabel, Laurent, and Sylvie face trouble on the road. Isabel remembers the day the Hungry Ones appeared, and Laurent struggles to fit in. And that is your episode description.
And I'm pretty sure we said last week that writer and director were going to remain the same, except for like in the writing area, it was the same writer, and then he was joined by an additional writer. So that looks to be the case. So
yeah,
writer,
again, just to refresh it, the writer, the guy from last week is a guy named David Zabel. And I think he is an executive producer of the show as well. So I'm guessing he's the showrunner. And we talked about him last week. He has written 3 of the 6 episodes of this season. He wrote the first one by himself. He wrote this one with a guy named Jason Richman. And he wrote episode 5, which is entitled Du Amour, with Jason Richman again. So these 2 guys collaborated on 2 of them. And like we said last week, this is his first time experience in the Walking Dead universe, but he has written for a bunch of other network television shows in the past. So he's got some stuff. He's got some creds. This other guy that he teamed up with, Jason Richman, he also is written 3 episodes of this season. He's written, again, Alouette, this one. He also wrote episode 5, which is Du Amour. And then he wrote episode 6, which is entitled Coming Home, not in French, with a gal named Laura Snow. So he also has 3 credits. But I could not find anything about him for writing on other television shows. He has no other Walking Dead credits, and like I said, no other credits at all. So this might be his first, not only his first time writing for The Walking Dead, but it might be his first time writing for anything. So,
wow.
So yeah, that is our 2 writers, and then the director is again the same gentleman. It's a guy named Daniel Percival, and these two episodes, episode 1 and then the one we're reviewing now, episode 2, are his only Walking Dead credits, and he has several television credits in other, just working in general as well. So this is not his first experience ever. This is just his first time in The Walking Dead. So that is your writer and your director.
I would say, thank you for that. I would say this is probably one of the most satisfying cold opens I've seen in the universe, and I'm including the main show. This is one of the most satisfying cold opens I've seen in quite some time.
Even Fear?
Yes! I swear to God, people, it's just another couple of months before we'll stop talking about the show, we promise.
Even Fear?
Yes. Oh, that was like broken record. I think one of the things that we all request, some people complain about it, but I would say request, is everybody always wants to know someone's apocalypse backstory. Like, who were you before? Mm-hmm. Where were you when the world fell? Like, that would be my 3 questions instead of, the ones that Rick always asked.
Right.
But, who were you? What did you do? Who were you before the fall? Where were you when the fall happened? And, like, what were your first instincts? Like, how did you survive that? Because we've seen in multiple iterations that first, like, 48 hours to the first week, depending on your location, was ridiculously chaotic, obviously.
Sure.
And that's been portrayed in all of the, the shows, the spinoffs, you name it, in various areas. And so I think that's something people want to know is, like, based on where you were, like, what were those decisions that you made in those first few hours that made the difference between millions of people dying and you made it? Like, what did you do? Like, and it could have been, luck of the draw, just it is what it is, and I think they did all of those things so amazingly. We got such a rich portrait. I don't need to see another flashback. I know exactly who Isabel is. I mean, if they show some more, sure. But prior to the fall, I know exactly who she is and what she was all about. They did such a great job of painting that so richly in such a short scene. If you didn't get it, then you weren't watching. So they painted her very richly. The scenes that she had where she had those first moments of what's going wrong here. The one that was near the bridge, and then when she was inside the subway station and things fell apart there, which that was haunting. Mm-hmm. And then, like, exiting the train station to, like, utter chaos happening on the streets. That was amazing. And then seeing the choices that she made in, stealing that key and then running away and making it, family is the most important. She made that decision immediately that, what happens to my sister in this moment is more important than anything else that's happening. I just thought they did that so wonderfully. And there were so many really great. We always say that images from when the world was falling apart are some of the most striking, and we always hunger for more of them, because everything in the Walking Dead universe is told usually in this perspective. It's you're getting something current, and the fall happened years ago. So, all these little breadcrumbs we get are always so amazing. And this did not disappoint. I thought it was amazing. Each scene was better than the last. And I would also say that because of who Isabel was, she was already primed for that moment, because she was already skittish about the thefts that she had done. She was looking in her, in her bag, and she thought she was being followed. And so she was sort of, looking behind her and all of this other stuff. But then she's out on the street, and as soon as she hears a noise and sees some commotion, she moves away from it. And then when she's down in the train station, she sees chaos and realizes she's one of those people. My mom used to say she's got a good shit detector. So she was in the train station, and that train looked like the world was falling apart, which it was. And she knew, I need to not be here right now. And she got away, which is great, because it explains, why she's lasted as long as she's had. She's got good instincts. And it makes me feel good about her sort of moving through the world with Daryl, that she's someone who makes, generally speaking, smart decisions, and she's got a good shit detector. So yeah, I can't say enough about that cold open. I thought it was amazing. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, it was okay. It was that's what I wanted Fear to be about. Going back
yes.
to Fear.
Yes.
I think a lot of us did that's what we were hoping we were going to get is, watching the world end, which is an incredible idea on paper, but to actually film it is unbelievably expensive. So, I think that's why most of the zombie stories that we see are, like you said, they take place and you have the convenient, 28 days later or whatever. And all of the stuff we want to see has already happened. And so, again, think about it. Almost unless they're stories that are taking place at the very beginning, when the outbreak starts, that they're almost always, oh yeah, the world ended, last month or last year, and these survivor people are, into it now, and they remember the old times, the before times, but we don't really see what went on. And so whenever, like you said, whenever we get a glimpse of it, we're just like, oh, that was so cool. And
right.
And this show didn't disappoint. First of all, the music choices in that club were awesome and totally nostalgic. Anytime you can, rock some New Order, it's a good thing. So, and I just, it's important to see her, you kind of preying on these guys that are either drunk or high or whatever, that are out in the music and on the dance floor. And, there's no talking, you just kind of start dancing with someone, and she kind of wriggles up to the guy and they kind of dance for a little bit while she takes their wallets and their watches and, anything else that's not nailed down. And then she just kind of slithers away. And, a couple of times the guys are like, where'd she go? And then they just like, oh, whatever. And they just keep dancing, because that's what you did, so, but so I loved it, because we get her whole, like you said, we know everything we need to know, that, okay, it's like this girl, she's a thief, and that's how she gets her money, is that she just goes and she, amongst other things, maybe she does other stuff we haven't seen yet, but at least that's one of the things she does, which is she'll just go and rob people. And, she just tries to do it like a pickpocket. So, you don't know you've been robbed until she is nowhere to be seen. So,
right.
And that comes in very handy a little bit later on, because we see that she's able to lift stuff off people there at the very beginning. And then later on, when I believe the guy's name is Quinn, which is the English guy with the beard who drives the Mercedes, who we don't really know what his relationship is with her. Is he a boyfriend? Is he a friend? We don't know. That they don't say. But she's able to lift the key from him without him knowing. Again, so that was kind of a nice double whammy, in that we know who this character is and kind of what her moral compass is at. And we see she has skills that she's going to use later on. And I agree. The highlight for me was the subway train, when she's watches it pull up, and you see, the ghouls, attacking people in the train, and people are like smashing the windows trying to get out as the train roars by. And you're right, she's just like, yeah, I'm not getting on that train.
Yeah.
And so she gets the hell out of there. So yeah, I thought that whole opening sequence with her was amazing. And I hope we're going to get a little bit more. I have a feeling that Quinn's going to come back into it. he didn't seem like the type that would just be like, oh well, she stole my car, whatever, I'm good. I think he's gonna come looking for her, and there's probably a comeuppance coming at some point here. I did the only nit that I pick with that is that it's like, what are you doing? You don't look at the loot you picked while you're still there. It's like, get the hell away. Once you're back in your apartment, then you can go through all the crap you grabbed. I mean, that's just asking to get caught, but that was minor. So yeah, I agree with you. I thought the opening thing was amazing. Some really cool visuals, some scary stuff, definitely end of the world stuff, seeing everybody running around and, the cars hitting people and so on. So that was it was great. I can't say enough about it. It was really great. And that was definitely one of the highlights of the episode for me.
Absolutely. It's interesting because I just realized too, while we were sort of pondering that scene, that it wasn't until she did that show and tell that, you're like, oh, wait until you get home. When she looks in her purse and you see all the stuff, it wasn't until then that, at least for me, I didn't know she was a thief. So all of the stuff leading up to it, I was just like, oh, she's just a club kid. Mm-hmm. And she's flirting with everybody that has the best drugs. That's what I read at first. I was like, oh, she's just dancing on people and doing whatever to try and get the best drugs for free.
Yeah, and she probably was. That was probably part of it too. But yeah, she has that little bonus. Side business going on.
Yeah,
because you see, she's kind of up at the bar at one point, and she's kind of all cozy with this much older dude who's buying both of them like Cosmopolitans or something. And this is a kind of club where you just know that even back in 2009, a mixed drink like that is probably, like $20, right? I mean, it's not like, it's quarter beer night somewhere. I mean, she's she's getting an expensive drink bought for her based on her kind of being all ornery with people to get what she wants. So yeah. Absolutely. I think that's totally a thing. And you're right. The like looking at the loot, it's a dumb move, but it's a narration move from the show, people telling the story. So we're like, oh, she's stealing stuff. Gotcha.
Yeah. But agreed. You do see her put it in that box when she gets back to the apartment. So they didn't need to have that scene. Like you were saying, like, wait till you get home to look in your purse. Like, they could have waited until then, unless stylistically they really wanted you to know who she was before she was in danger, as opposed to when she gets back to the apartment, we already know like she's in danger, and that, you know what I mean? Like it would have told that story in reverse. She would have been in danger, and then you're like, oh, she's a thief. She's not just a drug addict club kid.
She's not just a party girl. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. I agree. I'm not sure about the relationship with Quinn. Other than like, I'm curious if he knows what she does. Probably not, since it looks like she has her own apartment and she was hiding her stuff that she got. So probably not. But I'm curious to see how that pans out. And you're right. I feel like there's no way we're not seeing him again. There's got to be some sort of resolution, whatever it may be.
Well, let me just say real quick about Quinn, and this was kind of I got this impression on the second watch.
Okay.
My prediction, and remember last week I thought that Isabel was the mom, right?
Right.
And because just of the setup, and she had a kind of a checkered past, and we didn't know much about her. She wasn't always a nun, all that stuff. And so we find out, well, it's actually her sister. And so my prediction is that Quinn is the dad. And I based that on, as soon as he found out she was pregnant, he couldn't wait to get rid of her.
Right.
And the whole thing of when they first go to her apartment and she comes down with her sister and she's like, oh, I'm bringing my sister. And he kind of has this, I don't know if that's a good idea. And at first you're just kind of like, it's because, he has a place for her and him, and that's it. And now they're trying to bring another person, and that's going to be problematic and so on. But on the second watch, I'm kind of like, I think he doesn't want her around because he was playing around with her stepping out with her on Isabel, a couple months ago. And then, of course, once he finds out she's preggers, he's like, yeah, we can't take her. We need to get her to a clinic and then leave her,
Right.
And so that's my prediction. So we'll see. Now, if it's like the one I made last week, it'll actually be his brother is the dad, but we'll see. So
that's possible. I actually, to be fair, I only watched once. I didn't get a chance to watch twice. So I didn't get a chance to sort of watch his scenes again, knowing like sort of like how all the relationships. I was still trying to figure out who's who in that moment. So it's like all of their reactions kind of go over your head. But if I'd watched it a second time, I may have seen those reactions as well. So I didn't catch it because I only watched it once.
That's all right.
That's what I have to say.
That's why I'm here.
Yeah, I know. You're the second watcher, and I'm not.
So we kind of got the opening credit sequence set up now, and we didn't really talk about it last week all that much. So
yeah,
I thought
I noticed that.
We should go over that. So what are your thoughts? Because you are the opening credits, obsessive one on this podcast.
I guess so. I liked it, and it's funny. I paid very scant attention to it last week, but this week I really did. I was like, oh, when it started playing, I was like, oh, I didn't really fully pay attention last week. I'm going to do it this week. I think it's really cool. And it does exactly what the show is doing, which is takes a society like France that's been around for, like
thousands of years,
of years more than America. And, between the castles and that aqueduct.
Hundreds of years, but yeah.
And all of these historical buildings and locations and et cetera. And they take that and they marry it with the, the images of like the ghouls and stuff like that. And the way they do it with like, for example, they have the one image that's looks like a kind of like Renaissance painting of a, portrait. And it starts to burn around like the face area, and then it reveals like a ghoul's face underneath. And there was a lot of that, and you see a lot of like turn of the century kind of it looks like medical books or things like that, like science and whatever. And they're just very it looks very old timey, as it were. And I think it fits. I think it really, really fits. It gives like a whole vibe. And within the show has been giving off that vibe too. So it's like it all seemed to fit together nicely for me. What did you think of it?
It doesn't really affect me as much as it does you. I thought it was interesting that we see like the ghouls kind of touching stuff and then it burns, which sort of suggests the acid stuff that we saw in episode 1. Like you said,
right.
there's that looks like a painting by one of the old masters or something, and the ghoul kind of, the hand goes by and then you see it start to combust and burn away. And the part that kind of I'm not sure about though is all the red smoke that they bring up at the end, near the end of it, right, where you see like city streets and that are, whether it's Paris or somewhere, and like this like red, very, very cherry red smoke is just kind of coming up from the street and filling it all up, and I'm like, I don't know what that means, but and then you kind of get a little bit almost very similar, I think, in some ways to the Dead City opening sequence, where we see that there's a shot of the Eiffel Tower in the background and you see a couple ghouls animated kind of staggering around in front of it, and it's kind of similar to what we saw with the Dead City opening sequence at the end. So I like it. I think it's a real interesting way to remind us all that, oh yeah, we're in France, and like you said, France has this massive long history, much more so than the United States does, and so we have all of this history that's kind of all the past civilizations of France have been totally replaced by this new one that is just running roughshod over it. So again, really cool. I knew we needed to talk about it because we didn't really talk about last week because we weren't sure if that was the final one or not. So
right. And now we know.
Now we know. So there you go.
Now we know. So we see them on the road, and right off the bat, they are attacked.
Well, you know, it basically they
there's
start
conversation, and then
they're in their little wagon. They've got their mule, which we find out Laurent is very attached to, and then they come into this like village, and the mule then like won't go forward, and so you know they're like, what the hell's the matter? And then you know, maybe about 15 or 20 ghouls appear in front of it on the road, and I thought this was a weird choice. That Daryl's idea is, well, okay, clearly we just untie the mule from the cart and, you know, shoot the gun next to it so it'll go running, you know, down the road through the ghouls, and then they'll turn and follow it. And I'm kind of like, so you're going to give up your mule, and, you know, you've got this like wagon full of all your stuff. You're just going to have to leave it. But that's what they did. What did you think about that? I mean, I thought that was a curious move. It didn't seem like there were that many that he couldn't have cleared them all.
Yeah, it felt really kind of hackneyed. It was very I don't know, like there's other things they could have done. I know that realistically, like a cart and a horse, it's not like a car. It's not like they could just like beep, beep, beep and back up and get out of there. You know what I mean?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And I get that, but they could have more effectively, you know, tried to turn around a little bit and have led them away more effectively, and then gone through the village. I know that, you know, thematically they needed the mule to go,
right? Oh yeah,
and they needed it to be in a way where Laurent does not find out until later. And I get that. I know that that's what they were going for, sort of thematically and structurally, and they did that. I just think I agree with you that it's an odd choice. Like when he did it so quickly too. Yeah. You know, he immediately made that decision, and it was on his own. Like nobody talked about it. Like it'd be different if they said, "Why don't we do this?" Or "We've done this before and it worked well." You know, then we round the mule back up and attach it to the wagon and go. You know, whatever.
Well, particularly when he's in the moat later on, he has no problem getting out his Morning Star and his trench knife and, you know, dispatching, you know, 15, 20 ghouls that are much closer and all around him. I mean, these are all in front of you, and they're kind of hemmed in because it's a very, very narrow, you know, old village road that was like big enough for a cart, right? It's not a modern street where it's, and so you think all the advantages are on his side, and he's just like, nope, can't possibly do that. We're just gonna let our horse go or our mule go. And I'm just, and then he even says, grab all our stuff. And it's like they each took one bag. You know, like you left so much stuff. So anyway, I that was a very Daryl being un-Daryl moment as far as I was concerned.
I agreed, and this was one of those points we were talking about at the beginning where I actually I hadn't put that in my notes, but I saw it in yours, and I was like, yes. Very un-Daryl-like, and I can't wait to talk about it. And yes, it just was like, in you know, old school Daryl would have been like, hey, I'll make them go away. I'll go over there and drag them away. You guys go really fast with the cart and go down this road, and I will meet up with you later. Yeah, he's done stuff like that. I'll draw them away, you know. It just, again, another Daryl acting like, oh, I don't know what to do here.
Yeah.
This is beyond me. I don't know.
Yeah. But then we go from there to another very un-Daryl moment, because then they're on foot and they're walking, and then someone shoots an arrow at them.
Yeah, and it's his really smart idea to be like, I'm gonna go after that person, whoever they are.
Because, you know, they're clearly, I know they're by themselves. I know they don't possibly have an accomplice that's waiting for me to run past them so they can hit me from, but oh, wait, I just got knocked out from behind.
Yeah. Yeah, and at least they made a good choice in the sense that as soon as he got hit from behind and he falls down, you can see the look on his face like, man, I really should have known that person was there.
Yeah, I should know better, shouldn't I?
Uh,
Yes, you
my,
should, Daryl.
my years and years of experience show me that there really is going to be a person here, and he just wasn't. It's almost as if he was going to like run into a cave to like go
Ooh.
after a friend and just sort of blindly go.
Now, come
and
on
just
now, Daryl doesn't do that kind of stuff. Oh,
I
wait.
know,
Except when he did.
Except when he did. Yes. So yeah, I mean, we've seen them sort of stylistically make this choice before for Daryl, and the fandom reacted very much the same, like, hello, what are you doing? And on top of it, I hate to be rude about it, but he was overtaken by a bunch of kids.
He was.
You know, these weren't like, seasoned warriors or anything. I mean, that I take that back. That's not true. They are seasoned warriors because they have been in the apocalypse their pretty much their whole lives, but they're also they have the stature of a 14-year-old kid. So it's like Daryl's a full-grown man, and he was taken down like smarts wise and physically by
children.
Exactly. I'm just the whole thing was, and then you don't see the next scene. You just have to sort of play it in your head, and then the next thing you know, they are being walked back to these kids, their settlement.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like they've got Daryl tied up a little bit, and they've got the others along with them. They've got Isabel and Sylvie and Laurent together.
And they went back and got their wagon because they pushed that in too. So
yeah, exactly, because they're like, hello, supplies.
Yeah, right, exactly. So
yeah, they're being a little more precious about that wagon than the wagon owners are. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, but what's interesting, I thought, and maybe you disagree, so we'll see. I thought it was interesting that they went through this whole setup of them, shooting the arrow and then having him run after, and then they showed them like, doing this like weird chanting thing when they got all excited, and you're like, oh God, it's a cult and whatever, and you're thinking all these things because you're so used to how it usually works. And this group ended up not being how it usually works, which I thought was interesting. It's this group of kids who were being cared for at this school, and they were being cared for by an actual teacher, and they'd been there for as long as they can remember, basically. And they weren't antagonistic. They were actually nice people. And I thought that was, I mean, yes, it's a little, Mary Sunshine-ish, more than I was expecting in a show that centers around Daryl Dixon. Usually the happy stuff doesn't happen to him, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But it was a lot more optimistic and nice than I was expecting. And it was an interesting group. What were your thoughts? What did you think about our little band of, school children?
I agree with you. It was nice and just refreshingly different to break trope on this show, which, every iteration of this show that we've seen, the lesson is always the same, which is anybody you meet on the road is bad. Right. And there are degrees, right? It could be just a simple like the least bad are people that'll kill you and just take your stuff. And then you get into the more extreme of people that are going to kill you and put your head in a fish tank or put your head on a pike or whatever, or just eat you, But there are just levels, but it's always the same in that anybody you come across in this universe, you're gonna have to kill them. They're gonna kill you.
Yeah,
you're gonna kill them.
Yeah, it's fight the dead, fear the living
Yeah.
everywhere you go.
Everywhere, and that's always what it is. And so it was really nice to kind of like you said, to meet a group that, what, these people are, they're obviously they're children, so there's that, that's an interesting point as well, that they, out of everybody we've ever met on the road in the Walking Dead universe, it's these little French school kids that were able to remain civilized and not be like, well, we're gonna kill you now, and their leader isn't a psychopath, and
Yeah.
all of the things that we've just come to expect. And you're right, I was right there with it. When he gets knocked out or knocked down, and then he rolls over, and then the 4 or 5 of them come up with their spears, and they all have the gas masks with the funky eyes and stuff painted on them, right? You're just like, oh, this isn't good. And then when they pull up to the front of the school, they all start going, and they're banging their spears in the ground and stuff. And you're like, yeah, this is not good at all, And then they pretty much, it's just, the girl comes down and once the nuns are able to recite the prayer in unison, which was great, that she's like, okay, you guys are nuns. We're not going to kill nuns, let you go. And then, they tell the little white lie about Father Daryl. And so they let him go. And then they're just, stay as long as you want. We'll feed you. We'll do it. We'll let you watch Mork and Mindy. They were just part of the group. And that was refreshingly different. And so I enjoyed that. I thought that was a fun little twist.
Yeah. And of course, the more we got to know about them, the more their behavior made sense, because they were taught, survival skills and etc. from their teacher, but they were also taught manners and being civilized and not descending into chaos in, Lord of the Flies. And it makes me think of, like, one of the things you hear a lot in child development is, and it isn't the same for all children, but a lot of children, what they crave is they want structure, because there's a comfort to structure. You're going to get up at this time, you're going to go to school at this time, you're going to have these classes. After school is homework, and then you have a snack at 4, and then you know what I mean, like you
and
take
it's
a nap.
Routine. Every day is the same.
Exactly. And there's a comfort in that. And I'd like to believe that one of the reasons that these kids have thrived as well as they had is that with a teacher who was as influential to them and that they looked up to, this was someone who cared for them, but also, I hate to say she could remove herself emotionally because she wasn't related to them, but she still felt this absolute calling to have to keep these children safe and keep them, learning. Like, I really liked the structure of it because it just logically made so much sense. Of course, a teacher would be like that. Of course, a teacher would take a big group of children like that and take them under her wing and just be like, listen, I don't know when this world is going to be fixed, but until it is, this is what we're going to do. We don't know how to do this? Fine. We're going to find it in a book, and we're going to learn how to do it from a book. And then we're going to fail, but we're going to keep trying, and da-da-da. You know what I mean? It certainly seems like this is like such, and of course they all have PTSD, but they all are in a safe place with people that they consider family, with a leader who cares for them and provides structure, but also love and a sense of purpose too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Here are these kids at the end of the world who are being told, listen, you need to go outside and you need to pick those tomatoes, and that is your job for today. And it's very important, and you are a big part of this whole thing. And they all sort of had that sort of feeling about them, like they all had a purpose. And what I thought was great, too, was that they showed that they were still able to be children. They still played. They played hide and seek. They still had games. They watched TV and, things like that, that though she understood as a teacher that those things were still important to children for them to still grow and for their minds to mature is to have access to those things as well. And I thought it was an interesting contrast with Laurent, who has no children around him, who's been brought up in this very sheltered existence, and he just wanted to stay. And they said no, and they have to go. And I just thought that was so heartbreaking for this poor kid. It's the only sort of normal childhood thing that's happened to him his whole life, and he won't be able to stay, which I thought was really, really sad. So, but I again, sorry, it's not to get away from the point, but yes, I agree. I really liked the, I guess we could call them the elementary school gang.
Mm-hmm.
I thought they were great. I really, really enjoyed them. I thought it was interesting that the French girl sounded more like an American when she wasn't speaking French. But again, these are just nits that we're picking.
Yeah. Well, like one of the big nits I have with my note was like weird how every person that Daryl has met in this apocalypse can speak English. Isn't that just a funny coincidence? You know, it's just like, really? You know, but okay, I get it. You know, they want to make the show accessible to American audiences, and you know, people don't like to read subtitles, and how would Daryl be able to communicate if he, you know, because he don't speak French, so but it just was a little weird. I mean, I laughed out loud when he breaks into the castle and he finds the kid locked up in the room, and the kid's talking French, and Daryl's like, I don't speak no French. And suddenly the kid's like, oh, English? I speak English. And it's like, of course you do.
It's very convenient, but it's also a sad treatise on the fact that we don't value teaching foreign languages here in America, but other countries value teaching English to their native speakers. So it's just, I thought that's also another.
It's the hubris of Americans that, you know, when foreigners come to our country, we get pissed at them when they don't speak English, and then when we go to their countries, we get pissed at them because they don't speak English. So I mean, that's just us being kind of douchey, you know.
Yeah, and I like that was also on display in this episode. Was, you know, there are a couple of different moments of like, Americans,
stupid Americans, yeah,
stupid Americans.
Well, because I think when the girl that's in charge, her name is Lou, and she clearly is like a little older than the other kids, but she's still a kid too.
Yeah. And
but she's kind of taken over for Madame Dubois because Madame Dubois is on her deathbed, and she you know, she asked them about, they say they're nuns. She says, can you recite the prayer of, you know, whatever it was? And they do. And then she's like, what about him? And Isabel said, oh, this is Father Daryl, which was hilarious. And and she goes, he's here he came on a mission. He's from America. He came here before all this happened. And she even says what, and he does. And they tell her he doesn't speak French. And she's like, really? He's been here all this time and he still doesn't know how to speak French? And Isabel's response is, Americans. You know, so again, it's like they know it too. It's like, yeah, you know, Americans, we expect you to be able to converse in our tongue. I'm sorry, we do.
Right. It's like the guy that they run into at the castle. He didn't learn how to speak French, and he's been there. He actually has been there since the fall. So he's like an exercise in exactly what Isabel just said. Dirty Americans. We're terrible, aren't we?
Stupid Americans.
So come to find out, yes, they have this teacher. She's very ill. It really just looks like she's old. She's dying of old age. I
thought she was dead when they first showed her.
I'm not gonna lie. I did too. I was like, did they bring them here because they have a really good sharp knife that they want to use?
I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't know. So she's obviously at death's door, you know, and they're doing the thing where you're like, yeah, medicines might help. We can help you with that, yada, yada. So come to find out that they've been raided by this guy who lives in a castle. They call him a monster, and he steals things from them. And, Daryl finds out that he has at least a horse there that they know about. And he's like, well, I will help get your stuff back. And there's come to find out there might actually even be people there too. And he's like, I'll help you go there. If you show me where this is, I'll get you some medical supplies. I'll look for your people, and I'll get that horse. And
you're close. You're close. And again, I think this is the one-time thing, in that the guy that they're afraid of, he went into the villages nearby and took everything that wasn't nailed down.
Yeah.
So he took all the food, all the medicine, all that. So he didn't really raid them. He just took everything around them. And so when the teacher her medicine ran out, there was nowhere to go to get it because he had everything. So Lou and a couple of the kids tried to raid the castle, and only Lou came back. And that's the one kid. Remember when they're having dinner and Laurent tries to sit down next to this one kid, and he's like, "That seat's for my brother."
Yeah, and that's the one that was in the moat later.
Yeah, right. And so he's one of the kids that went with it and didn't come back. And of course, we find out that Lou is not really being very honest with these kids and saying, "Oh no, he's off on a mission and he'll be back." Right? Which again, like Isabel tells or asks Daryl earlier in the episode, like, you don't have kids, do you?
Yeah.
Because they're lying to Laurent about what's going to happen to the mule. And and Daryl's like, "What are you talking about? The mule's going to get killed." And she's like, "You don't talk to children much, do you? Just like, you can't just be that blunt. It's not going to work. You're going to crush them." And so, but anyway, Lou said that the guy had a horse, at least one, because he used it to pull a cart to put all the stuff he was looting in. So Daryl's fixated on getting another horse. And so he's like, well, if he took everything, he probably has the medication you need. So if we go, we can get a horse for us, and we can get the meds to save your teacher, which is a lie.
Right.
Because he can already tell the woman's, pretty much, like what is the line from Princess Bride? Mostly dead. Right.
Yeah. She's only slightly alive.
Yeah. And so, but again, he's doing it for what he thinks is, to get his objective, accomplished and so on.
Oh,
but
sure.
Anyway,
absolutely.
Sorry to interrupt, but the narrative was a little off from what it was. I just wanted to correct that because I know our fans are sticklers for that. So
yeah, they at first they don't want to go. There's obviously bad memes of
she
the
won't
raid.
go.
Yeah, the raid that didn't go well, and obviously they lost people and etc. So she, at first they're not interested, but then eventually, what is her name again?
Lou.
The leader, Lou.
Yeah,
Lou eventually is like, I will, and I'll go with you. So it's just the two of them that end up going. Mm-hmm. And there was this really funny scene where when they get there, there's like a shed right outside of the entrance to this castle, and they notice at first when they come up to it, they can hear a bunch of walkers, and Daryl goes over to look, and there's a moat around the castle, like you do. Mm-hmm. And it's filled with walkers, and I'm like, a moat full of walkers is actually pretty smart, It's
a good idea.
Yeah, and he's got the drawbridge up. So if you've got the drawbridge up and a moat full of walkers, nobody's coming into your castle, pretty much. But
unless you're Daryl Dixon.
Yeah, and you find the little garden shed that has a bunch of like old rotted out farm implements. There's pieces of pitchforks and this, that, and the other, and shovel heads and all this other stuff. But they find this one piece that's kind of like a spade that just doesn't have a handle. It's just the sharp end. And Daryl's like, yeah, that'll work. And he steps out of the shed, and then he locks Lou in the shed.
Yeah,
And
he
he's like,
tells her,
I
see if
work.
you can find a bigger one. And so
Yeah,
she's
see if
like,
you can find
okay,
it.
so
Just to work and see if you can find a bigger one. And he steps out, and she turns to look again in like this big bin of them, and he shuts the door and locks her in, and wedges it closed. And he's like, I work better by myself anyway. And he, he's doing the thing where he's like, I don't want to put a kid's life at risk or in danger. And even though she went with open eyes and all that other stuff, so he's trying to be the savior.
I think he's just like, you're just going to slow me down.
Yeah. And I'm sure that's like ultimately what he feels is like, ugh, I can't do this with a kid.
Yeah, right. It's not going to work.
Yeah, not at all. So he makes his way inside. He uses that, he sort of repels his way over to the drawbridge and climbs in, and almost immediately finds a room full of medicines. And I'm this is amazing. How did he do that?
I mean, it's just like a room just crammed full of everything. But yeah, there's like whole shelves of just boxes and boxes of medicine, and it just kind of it confirms Lou's story that like the guy that lives in this castle literally just went around to every house and every building, and anything there he took, whether he thought he would need it or not, which is smart. I would have done it. Yeah,
you need a stockpile.
Right. So he's able to get, there's literally like 50 boxes of the medicine that we see on the table next to Madame Dubois there at back at the school. So he's able to get all that stuff. But then he hears one of the kids, like we said, locked up in a room, and so he goes and kind of lets him out, and then the stupid American that's living in the castle starts shooting at them. And so, he gives his gun to the kid and said, do you know how to use this? And he kind of gives him the 5-cent tour on how to load the gun. And so he goes, you keep him busy. And so, and the guy has a single shotgun as well that's shooting at them. So every time they shoot, they have to stop and reload. And so when the guy reloads, Daryl's able to get out of there and get into the building that the shooter's in, and ultimately comes up behind him and, gets the drop on him and captures him. So,
yeah. And then, of course, this guy is like, oh, my God, you're an American, too. And was his name was RJ, someone said online?
Yeah, it's RJ. Yeah.
I'm like, really?
Yeah. Again, he's just constantly being bombarded with, references to, his people. Yeah. So.
Yeah, and this guy's like, oh, I'm from Texas, and I'm just trying to get back to mine, And Daryl, I loved how Daryl just sort of like took him down, and he's like, there's nothing there. He's like, you don't know what you're talking about, and he's like, dude, East Coast, Midwest, all of Texas, it's gone.
Yeah, he said there ain't no home, asshole. And he goes, everybody back home is gone. They've been gone a long time. And then guys is like, nuh-uh.
Yeah, he basically, he's like clearly got that like, PTSD of like he's gonna, deny and everything that he hears just because he can't like mentally picture it himself.
He can't hack it. So that doesn't agree with his worldview. So clearly you're just full of crap,
I did think, no, go ahead. I
was gonna say his name is RJ Gaines is what he says his name is, and he's from Giddings, Texas.
Oh, lovely. So, someplace I'll never go.
I know.
I thought it was interesting, though, I will say this, that his first reaction when Daryl's like telling him like it's, dude, like nothing's left or whatever, the guy's like, well, what do you mean? So this guy was thinking that this only affected France.
Yeah.
Or Europe, pretty much.
Or that Americans would be able to overcome it because we're America.
Right, exactly. But I just thought that was such an interesting sort of perspective for this guy to have, to just be like, oh no, it's fine. Like Texas is strong and they'll bounce back kind of thing. He just was so convinced that America would be fine, and that this is, France just fell apart, but other people wouldn't, or whatever. Like, there's no way it's this bad everywhere else, or whatever,
Right. Yeah.
And it's
yeah.
just it's so funny considering how far into the apocalypse they are. But if you think about it, I mean, they're just as, I guess marooned is the wrong word, but they're just as isolated.
Yeah,
as America was from the rest of, the planet. So, there's no way that people in America could think that everything was happening in France the same way, I mean, we only know just because of, Jenner and CDC and all that other stuff, but you could see somebody in America having a similar reaction. Oh, you mean Europe's gone too? And like, yeah, you would have seen some planes by now, don't you think? Well, people saying, "Hey, let's go save some of those Americans."
No, they wouldn't save us because we're douchey.
No, we're stupid.
Again, this goes back to the part of the apocalypse that we really don't get to see, which is what kind of coverage was there about the whole world when this started? Right. It usually, one of the first things in almost all the apocalypse stories, particularly the ZA, but just apocalypse in general, is that the first thing that goes down is the communications.
Yeah.
TV
and radio.
Yeah. So there's no news, there's nothing on, all the channels are off, the phones don't work, the internet's down, all that stuff. So people are literally like in the dark, and we don't know, is this local? Is this, happening just in America? Is this happening everywhere? We don't know. And then you get the wild rumors and things of someone heard from someone that, oh yeah, Europe is fine, and it's not, or oh no, it's just as bad there or even worse, and so on. But we never really get to see that, and this is no exception. We don't know, other than Jenner was obviously communicating with the French scientists for a while, but we don't get any idea of, well, what did the public know? What was CNN saying, or what was Fox News saying, or what was MSNBC, or were all of those news networks just wiped out in the first day? Right. And we're off the air again. You never know. But yeah, the fact that guy, that RJ Gaines, was convinced that no, Texas, man, come on, we got more guns. We got more guns per square inch than any other place on the planet. If anything can protect it, it's us. So he was very convinced that, oh yeah, Texas is going to be just fine. And I just need to get back there. And, when Daryl tells him that it's all gone and he's seen it, that guy's like, no, you're wrong. I nope, can't possibly be true. So.
Isn't that so funny, the way people are when you give them evidence and they're just like, nope, you must be wrong, sir. I'm sorry.
That's right. Alternative facts.
Yes.
It's like if you have an election and you lose the election to another guy, but then you just continue to insist that you won and that there had to be some sort of, hanky-panky about what's going on. It'd be silly like that. I mean, no one would ever do that, right?
No, that's ridiculous. I can't even imagine somebody doing something like that. That's so dumb.
Me neither.
That people would fall for something like that?
I
know. We digress. I made a note too about RJ where I said, we're in the middle of France, nowhere France, mind you. We're in the countryside, and we're in a castle in the countryside, and we find the one American who got stuck in France during the fall.
Pretty darn coinky-dink, huh?
I know, right? Why though? That's the thing I don't understand. Because it's not like they took him prisoner and he remained a part of their group. You know what I mean? If he stuck around for some reason, maybe I could see specifically making him American. But there's really no reason to do it. I mean, the guy's, a zombie lollipop, 5 minutes later.
I'm guessing that it was just, hey, let's throw in just kind of another unbelievable character here. Again, what are the odds? What are the odds that Daryl's here, right? They're astronomical. So let's just kind of keep saying, well, there were Americans abroad when this happened. And, this guy, for whatever reason, was able to find this completely abandoned yet intact castle. and live there, because he was by himself. He didn't have anybody with him.
Oh my God. It makes you wonder, like, what was he doing in France to begin with?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Who knows?
He was looking at the paintings.
He was like, I'm looking at those pretty paintings in that museum. They got that pretty lady all by herself.
Right. She's awful small, though. I got her upstairs in the bedroom now.
Yeah. There, let me see. If we go to, I think they showed the birth scene next. And if I look at my notes right, but let's finish off the castle, and we'll get back to the flashbacks. I wrote down it's Chekhov's moat, because
Yep.
you can't bring up a moat in Act 1 and not have someone fall into the moat. You have to have that happen. And obviously, if you're going to fall into the moat, then you're Daryl Dixon, you're going to be fine, right? You're fine. They were barely moving towards him. He was totally fine. And by the way, he fell, so, it's not like he broke any bones or anything either. He's just perfectly intact.
That's right. Yep.
No, no ghouls around him. So that's, more unbelievableness, but plot armor, it's heavy. The plot armor is heavy. It's hard to carry around at times. I just find it hard to believe that on a show that's called Daryl Dixon, that anywhere before the last episode, you're going to kill a character on the show called Daryl Dixon whose name is Daryl Dixon. It just doesn't seem to be a thing you would do. Right. I would love to see him be in more danger in those moments. You know what I mean? Like, maybe if he were hanging by the rope and they were grabbing at his feet or his ankles or something, you know what I mean? But instead he's like right in the middle, in the thick of them. And they're like, oh, human, what do we do now? Ooh. I don't remember. Yum, yum. Do we eat them? Do we not eat them? How does this work?
Well, we slowly advance on him in just enough space so he can take us out one at a time.
Right, exactly. And then he's going to see the canister of what is, some type of fuel, whether it's gas or propane or something like that. Yep. And he blows up the canister, creates an explosion, and he's fine. Don't you worry. Daryl Dixon is going to survive.
Duck behind the wall, so he's shielded from the blast.
Right.
But his eardrums are also intact, not any damage there.
Right.
Yeah. And again, it's such a huge blast that there are no ghouls at all that are nearby him. I mean, he has a nice cushion to allow him to grab the rope that they throw down and get out of there. So.
Right. He didn't. He was fine, but of course our what's it called? Wasn't fine. RJ, our pal we just met.
RJ gets eaten like a piece of hung meat there. That's in the because what they did was they tied RJ up by his wrist, like he was cuffed almost, and they had him tied to the back of the wagon. And they were just going to like drag him back to the school and let Lou and the kids, I guess, decide what to do with him. And then the canisters fall off because over the drawbridge because they hit a bump, and actually the cart breaks. If you remember, the axle's broken and the wheel's screwed up. And so Daryl, again, newbie Daryl, he puts his gun out in the open, down on the ground or in the cart. So then he's working on the wheel, and so that allows RJ to kind of run up and try and grab it, and so then they struggle and they both go over to the side, and so RJ is literally strung up by his hands, dangling, kind of like right perfectly, at the right height for the ghouls to just go to town on his legs and his lower body. So And his hands are tied up. He can't do anything. All he can do is say, "Get off me, goddammit! I'm an American."
I just had to include that quote because just so ridiculous.
It was.
But it says everything you need to know about Americans.
Yep.
Oh, man, the privilege, the absolute privilege.
That's right.
So they eventually are, they're fine because, what's her face? Lou gets out of the shed that she was being held that she was held in, that he put her in.
There's this scene where somebody starts trying to open the door from the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And she doesn't know who it is. They're they don't say anything. They're not being like, hey, hello, I'm a human. They're just, something's pulling at the door. And so she gets an arrow out and she's kind of like got that nervous, like, I don't know if I can do it. Oh my God, what's going to happen? And then the door opens and you see someone in the sunlight, but you can't really see them at all clearly. And then it cuts back to Daryl. And then, of course, we find out that it's one of the other kids from it's the kid who his dead brother's
His brother is missing. Yeah.
He either snuck out after them or whatever, and he rescued her. And so then they, kind of saved Daryl there at the nick of time. She shoots a couple ghouls with her bow and arrow, and then they run a rope to the horse. They detach the horse from the wagon, and then Daryl, puts the rope around his waist, and then the horse pulls him up. And he's able to get out, and then they end up going back to the school.
Yeah.
So, but of course we find the dead brothers in there, and of course this raises a whole issue of Lou is lying to the kids, and how is that going to affect things, and so on.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting because they did have a couple of different threads where we had people lying to children, and we've while we're doing the Daryl stuff, we've got a, sort of a parallel scene back at the school where Laurent is with the kids and they go out and they're playing hide and seek and doing a bunch of different things. He ends up finding the horse, and he finds the dead horse, and he's very upset by this. And Isabel and Sylvie, they go out, they're trying to find Laurent. They're looking around. They do find him. They find the horse first, and he's off to the side, and he's like, you lied to me. Mm-hmm. And he's just very upset about the whole thing, right? And meanwhile, we've got this, the Daryl at the castle sort of parallel story, and the final moment of that whole sequence is, the young boy finding out that his brother is dead, and he's in the moat there, and he says to Lou, you lied to me. Right. So it was this interesting sort of like two parallel stories that were saying sort of the same thing. And I think if Lou could go back and if Isabel could go back, I think they would still lie to those kids, knowing that they created some happy space in between there before they found out this sort of sad thing. Because you don't want them to be sad, this whole time. You want them to, they're trying to shield them from these bad feelings. And I just thought it was really interesting because it was showing that, adults make this mistake, and, Lou is not an adult. She's just an old kid. She's probably a mid-teenager. But she's, made that mistake as well. With best interests in mind for both of those kids, it still can, bite you in the ass in the long run, lying to the kids. So, yeah.
Right. Plus, Daryl lied to Lou about the medicine, too.
Yes, that's true. That's true. So there's a
lot of lying going on in this episode, people sort of saying what they need to say to get what they want.
And almost white lies, things that are not harmful to lie about unless the person finds out you're lying. Then they're upset about the thing you lied about, and they're upset that you lied to them about it. Right. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So one of the other things that happens is we get sort of we go sort of full circle on this flashback of Isabel's. And, there's the first section where she, we get the cold open. We get them sort of traveling a little bit, and then her sister has this, she's in pain. It's clear that she's pregnant, and that's the scene at the gas station where she steals the keys and they keep going. And sort of the wrap up of that scene is the wrap up of the flashbacks is we see them arrive at the Abbey, at where Isabel ends up staying, where the nuns are, etc. And they take them in, of course, because they're good Christians, and they take them in, and they're trying to assist her. And I guess it turns out that did we catch what Isabel's sister's name was? I can't remember.
Lily.
Okay. So it turns out Lily was bit, in that they had this one moment on the road where there were ambulances, and they immediately, she's like, oh, maybe they can help us. You're in pain. Maybe they have medicines. And it's not a stupid thought. You know what I mean? Because the lights are flashing, and they're like, maybe there's a paramedic that can assist us. So that was another scene that we got of them on the road. And so she pulls over, and they get out of and she's like, hello, is anybody here? And then, of course, like 3 or 4 different ghouls come out from behind the ambulance. And immediately she's like, oh, my God, get back in the car. And they're sort of grabbed from all angles. And you could tell, like, Lily was grabbed in a way that I was like, I wonder if she got bit. And she was. So when they get to the Abbey and they're being cared for by the nuns and the priest there, they show the bite on her arm. And it's all black and gross and necrotic looking. It's pretty gross, but it's pretty clear what's going to be happening here. She's going to die of this, but she's also in labor. So they go to get her prepped, and it's clear that not only is she in labor, but she is way further along in her pregnancy than Isabel thought she was. She said she's at least 7 months along, which means she might actually be more, and she's just lying to make it better. So she goes into labor, and they're assisting her, and then out of nowhere she dies. She's straining.
Well, she was bit, so
Yeah. It's gonna happen. Yeah, but I mean, she was straining, she was pushing and pushing and pushing, and it just, the exertion and everything, and plus the infection from the bite, she passes away. And so they ready themselves immediately. They're like, oh, we know what's going to happen next. So they sort of step away. They get some other. He's getting ready to cut the baby out of her. And so Isabel is, of course, heartbroken, and she's holding her hand, and and then we have like an Amy and Andrea moment where Lily wakes up. She's like, she's waking up. She's coming back.
Moving. She goes, she's moving.
And I'm like, no.
But you have to remember that this is literally like day 3.
Yeah. Oh, God.
All this. So, they don't, you have to assume that Isabel doesn't really know the rules.
Yeah. I don't think anybody does.
And I don't think the nuns and the father do either. I think, no. Because I mean, they show them like wrapping up and, treating the bite wound. And they bandage it, and they like make a big deal out of it, treating it like it's just a regular wound.
Yeah.
So I don't think they were at that point aware that, she's going to get a fever and die in a couple days here. So
it's interesting because when the priest went to go get, like, he got a knife and some things, a sharp blade and some things, I thought at first, because you forget different groups, and this was so early on, and it's been a while since we've had a story that was this early in the apocalypse. When he went to go get the knife, I immediately was like, oh, he's prepping to put her down. And that wasn't it at all. He was prepping to cut the baby out.
Yeah, he does a C-section on her. Although it is interesting that once Lily revives, the nuns like strap her down real quick.
Oh yeah.
You know, they
Yes.
put the fabric straps over her arms and her chest and stuff. So it's like, yeah, you're not going to move. You're going to be immobilized here. So they had enough forethought and you know, instinct to be like, yeah, she probably shouldn't be moving around too much, you know. But no, I got the sense that they were, you know, that they were very unaware of, you know, what are the rules of this universe and how the bites work and what's going to happen and so on. So
Yeah, and just like people who die, like they don't know, even without the bites, like you wonder, like when does it jump to, oh, everybody who dies turns?
yeah,
Because that's
right.
always that's a surprising thing as well. So I have questions.
Yeah.
And I put it as my sort of last point, but since we're sort of talking about, you know, the whole Laurent and the birth and everything, I'm curious about, you know, do you consider, are we sort of stretching the rules of the universe? Because you got to figure, let's assume that, you know, Lily got that bite a few hours before, because it was light out when they came upon that ambulance. So even if it's the same day, which, you know, the growth of that bite shows that it was probably only a few hours or so. But even so, the baby is in her womb and she's got all of her, you know, zombie infused, you know, blood coursing through her veins, including her uterus. And she's supplying, you know, the whole point of a placenta is you're supplying your unborn baby with blood and nutrients and all that other stuff. So do you think it breaks the rules of the universe for her to have held Laurent in her stomach as long as she had, considering the bite?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. It does. Yeah, it did. It's it flies in the face of everything we've been told. But again, remember, they all think this kid's the Messiah.
Right, because of this.
Right. So that's why he is quote unquote special. Right. I know you put this in your notes. You know, you almost get the sense that the guys who came up with this story had just finished The Last of Us and went, you know what would be a good story? Let's have a kid that could be immune somehow and have someone Daryl will try and get this kid to another place where, you know, they can use the immunity. You almost get that sense because it's very similar.
Oh, God, yeah. It's terribly similar.
Yeah. And you know, this is not the first time that we've seen in zombie movies, you know, in the incredibly awful Zack Snyder's remake of Dawn of the Dead, there is a pregnant woman who gets bit and, you know, doesn't bother. She and her husband don't tell anyone that she got bit, and so they eventually like go off. They have the whole mall, right? And so they go off to some store and they're basically like, don't bother her because she's going through the pregnancy, and she's very near the end. And eventually the rest of the survivors go over there, and of course the wife has died and he's got her strapped down, similar to the way that the nuns had strapped down Lily. And he's just like, I'm just waiting for my baby to be born. And then like the baby comes out and it's a zombie baby, you know, of course. It's so this is not completely, you know, untried territory, you know, that they're going on in zombie stories. But it absolutely, in my opinion, you know, it is not just stretching the rules; it's just breaking the rules. You know, I don't know how that kid survives. I'm sorry, he doesn't. You know, like you said, I mean, it's all tubes in there, and the blood that she has is going to it. So if she has the infection, it's getting infected, or he's getting infected. So yeah, I don't understand. Other than they had to have a miracle so he can be the chosen one.
Yeah, because like to me, I don't feel like The Last of Us is a different world. It's a different world than this world. There's different rules involved. But to me, I feel like I forgive them what happened to them because what happened in that show, because like Ellie's mom was bit like
right when she's gonna give birth.
She literally was like bit and pushed Ellie out like less than 5 minutes later. It was like 2 minutes later and she fell out of her. Yeah. So it's like that I believe a little bit more because it was like less likely, you know. I don't know that means she was in the womb long enough to create the sort of super immunity that we think that she had. That, well, not that we think that she has. She has an immunity in Last of Us, but I think because she was in the womb as short of a time as she was from the bite to when she was born, gives it so much more believability. I don't know about this. Gabriel lost the use of an eye just getting some walker blood in his eye. Right. You know what I mean? Like those are the things that we already have in this accepted Kirkman universe. And it just feels a little wrong, you know?
Well, it's not really a direct comparison because in The Last of Us, the infected people don't die. You know, they're still
true. They're more like hosts.
Yeah, they're still living, right? There's, you know what I mean? It's just they're clearly infected, and you know the cordyceps is in their brain and making, you know, in control. Whereas in the Romero/Kirkman universe, you know, this whatever it is that's causing this, whether it's a virus or, you know, aliens from space or whatever, right? Yeah. The Venus probe that has the weird radiation, if you want to go all the way back to Night of the Living Dead, you know, whatever's causing it, it kills you. You know, you actually die and then you reanimate. So it's a totally different setup. And, you know, again, part of the idea or the rule is that if you get bit by one of these things, you die. There's no way around it, right? Not even the guy in Fear the Walking Dead. Remember, he thought he got bit and was still alive, but it turns out he just got bit by a crazy person. You know, but yeah, I mean, you know, the only way to survive is to amputate the limb immediately, if that's possible. Yeah. You know, if you get bit on your torso, you're just dead. But anything else, you know, you get bit on the arm, cut the arm off, leg, cut the leg, or whatever. But that's an unbreakable rule, you know, that's how it works. And this kid comes along and it breaks the rule. So, yeah. And so again, I understand why they're doing it, because again, he has to be a miracle baby. He has to. Why is he special? Why is he the one? Why is he the chosen one? You know, that's the Messiah. This is why. You know, that clearly there is something about him that is totally different than any other person on the planet, and that's why he's special. I don't really agree with it. I think it breaks the rules, and the rules are the rules, and we can't have you know, a world without rules, because then we just have chaos. But I understand why they did it.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. I wish the time was a little more tight. That's all. Yeah. I feel like it's too.
Well, I think we would be approaching this a lot differently if The Last of Us hadn't been out last year.
That's true. That's true. I mean, because we've got that to compare it to.
Right. And you know, and the fact that The Last of Us was so good and, you know, so well made and so well written and so well acted and all that stuff. And, you know, I know the Emmys have been postponed like 6 times now, but The Last of Us has like 11 Emmy nominations or something crazy, right? Yeah. I mean, it's you know, clearly for the calendar year of 2022, 2023 or whatever the Emmy year is, it's one of the best dramas that was made, right, for that year. So it's tough to compete against that. And since this show is coming in after the fact, we're already going to be like, well, Last of Us already did this.
Yeah.
So there's that. They're competing with that too. So
yeah, that's true. Let's see. I did have a big long, before we got to that question I did have a long point where I was also comparing it to Last of Us again, where I said, much like Last of Us, we have adults keeping the full truth from a, air quotes, special child for their own protection. And I think that Laurent's reaction to the mule death is a direct foreshadowing of how he's going to react later, because he's going to find out more details about himself. And he's also going to find out this is a big deal. Isabel is not just a woman who looks after him. That is his actual family.
Right.
You know, and I think it's, you know, someone who's a family member who would keep that information from you, he's going to feel really, really betrayed. Very, very betrayed. So I mean, we're clearly going to see that happen because they wouldn't build up this lie so much. They wouldn't even talk about it. Yeah. You know.
Well, we kind of get a little bit that like they start on that path in this episode because there's the scene where they're playing hide and seek and the little girl finds him right away. And, you know, he talks about, you know, boy, it's so weird. Back at the Abbey, the nuns could never find me. And then the other kids show up and they start asking him about, you know, well, how did you get to the Abbey and what happened to your family? And he tells this like story that's like almost out of like the Hunger Games. It's like what happened to his mom and dad. I mean, obviously not real, not true. But this is what he's been told, you know, that mom died and then dad was wrongly accused of some crime and was sent to the Foreign Legion to go fight the hungry ones and died and got a medal, right? You know what I mean? And you're like, what? You know, and the kids, they're, you know, what did you say your mom could do? You know, you can smell the BS.
Yeah.
You know, the kids are like,
bullshit detector. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, the kids are like, that's not true. And he's like, yes, it is. And then as they walk away, he's kind of like, wait a minute, you know, it's almost like, you know, the kid on the playground that, you know, believes in Santa and then an older kid comes along and goes, well, you know, he's not real, right? And then the kid's like, yeah, he is. But then he starts kind of closely thinking about the whole setup and wait, how can he get to every house and how can the reindeer fly and how does he build the Xboxes and all, you know what I mean? All those logic arguments that, you know, end up killing Santa for everybody, right? And,
yeah.
And so I think he's already starting to doubt that story. And then when he finds that they lied to him about the mule, that's even more leading him down that path of, well, if they lied about that, you know, what else are they lying about? What other things have they told me that clearly is just BS to kind of make me go along, you know? And so yeah, I think he's definitely starting to question a lot of things that like any kid would do at that age anyway, because he's starting to become like a real person now, a full person, and not so much a kid. And you start asking questions about, well, wait a minute, how does the world work, and how did I get here, and what happened to my parents again? Did you really know that? You know, all those things. And you know, up until this point, they could tell the white lie, and he'd be like, okay, and go off and play, and they're like, dodge that one. But now, not so much, because he's like, wait a minute, I want to know the truth. So yeah, you're right. I think it's definitely coming. We're definitely going to get that showdown, and it would not be surprised if he runs away.
Yeah, and then like the finale moment is like, you know, oh, Daryl, you have to choose between this ship that's going back to America and this boy that you have to decide between this sheep and this boy that you have grown to love. Oh my God.
To love and care for, like Judith, that you are leaving behind because you're not going to get on the ship.
Yeah. We will call you Uncle Daryl, and it will give you the PTSD about like Judith, and you will be like, no, I must go find Laurent because he's my boy. And you're like,
what about Rick and Michonne, who you were supposed to be finding on this whole time? Yeah, I mean, you're right. I don't know if it'll be the last episode, but at some point, like episode 4, 5, or 6. Laurent's going to find out the truth and run away, and they're going to have to spend a whole time looking for him, and the bad guys are going to end up catching him. Clearly, the dude that Daryl shot from episode 1 is going to find him at some point, because remember he was going to take the kid with him with all of his soldiers back in the first episode. So yeah, it's you're absolutely right. It's coming. It's absolutely coming, and you're right that
maybe not with as terrible accents as we just did, but the scene is happening.
Yes, absolutely, and you're right, like you said, that it's direct foreshadowing. The mule is that when he finds out that, you know, basically everything he's believed in his whole life is not true, it's not going to end well for Isabel.
Yeah, it's going to be gross. I feel bad, but it's like she painted herself into her own corner, you know. So speaking of that dude, you've got some notes in there, and I forgot to include it in mine, but we got this scene with the dude that was shot, Mr.
Yes.
Face Tattoo guy.
Yeah.
That he went back to the Abbey and they like sort of stupidly left a bunch of things around, which you comment on.
The guy's name, by the way, according to the wiki, is Codron. Sorry, Codron. Codron. I don't know how you pronounce it.
Codron. Sure.
It's a French name, but yeah, tattoo face works for.
There you go. Sorry, if you do the it makes it better. Codron.
Yeah, I kind of think we should go with tattoo face, kind of like taser face from Guardians of the Galaxy. That's your name, tattoo face. But yeah, he goes back to the Abbey, and of course we see some of his soldiers just lying there. So like they buried the nuns, right? But they left the dudes just lying there. So I'm sure they were getting nice and ripe. But then he goes into the Abbey, and first of all, he finds a pistol lying on the ground. And I'm like, Daryl, why would you not take that gun with you? That's dumb. And then they left the map on the wall with their route in a big red line. It's just like, was that smart? I don't think so. But I mean, that just goes to like those soldiers that are out there. They all have, what look like pretty good boots that they're wearing. Why don't you take those? You always need footwear. Why weren't they stripped of anything? Knives, bullets, whatever. I mean, again, I always go with the what would I do in that situation? And that's the thing. It's like, hey, you know what? That's one of the things soldiers do is when they come across a dead soldier that on the other side, they will go through and take anything valuable, anything they can use. That's what you do. And even more so in the apocalypse where there's even harder to find stuff. So that bugged me. That was definitely a moment where I'm like, I don't, the pistol really bugged me. I just don't see Daryl being like, I'll just leave that there.
I just don't understand leaving, like with the map, you're literally like saying, this is the way we went. Please come follow us. Please
follow us. Yeah.
Especially since we are on foot or in a horse-drawn cart.
Yeah.
Please, bad guy, who we have established has access to vehicles. Please, this is our right. Please follow us. Yeah,
right. I mean, again, like the sneaky person in me, I would have gone and moved the red line from Paris to down to Marseille or something on the the opposite side of the map. So if someone were to come in there, they'd be like, "Aha! They are heading to Marseille. Go!" And then you never see them again. But yeah, I mean, that was just again another moment of newbie Daryl that the Daryl that we know that survived this long, he should know better.
Yeah, definitely. That'd be such an easy way too to show the misdirection.
Yeah.
If anybody, because I mean, they have this established bad guy who is clearly going to come back at some point.
Right. And Daryl knows he got away.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, he was shot a couple times, but still, it's like, what? Did you see his corpse? Then there's always a chance he's going to come back. And where's the first place he's going to come back to? Here,
where all of his guys were shot. I mean, where he was shot. Yeah.
Right. So I mean, it's just that was definitely a kind of an eye roll moment for me. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
So
for sure. Let's see. I think we grabbed a bunch of things that we didn't get to on yours. Is there anything else you want to discuss? I think you got one or two things there.
Yeah, I do. And one thing I didn't write down, I thought you were going to write it down, but we did kind of skip over the whole dinner sequence in the school. Where Father Daryl leads grace, tells this great prayer. And then, of course, we get another mimic scene, right?
Yes.
We're 2 for 2 now in that. And it's Daryl eating, too, by the way. I don't know if that means anything, but, he... I think Lou just gets done talking about the importance of manners and etiquette, and they teach that in addition to their studies. And we're going to be civilized. And then of course Daryl literally picks up his soup bowl and just slurps it down, right?
Yeah.
And all of the kids are like, "Woo!" And they put their spoons down and they're all slurping it. And then he wipes his mouth, and they all wipe their mouth with their hands, just like him. And yeah, I thought it was a fun little moment. And the prayer was great. I was a lot deeper than I was expecting from Daryl Dixon. You know, I was almost waiting for the rub-a-dub-dub, thanks for the grub kind of thing. And, and instead he, what did he say? He said, I got it written down somewhere else here. Let's see.
He kind of basically is like, he says,
here he goes, Lord, I'm
about
sure you
it's
have
a lot about like deserving it and stuff like
yeah.
that. Yeah.
He's like, Lord, I'm sure you have your reasons for turning the whole world upside down. Maybe we deserve it for being so mean to each other. We probably do deserve it, but not tonight. No, tonight is good. And if this isn't good enough for you, I don't know what is. Amen. But anyway, I thought it was a really interesting moment, kind of a little insight into Daryl. I think that's probably where Lou confirms her suspicion that he is not a priest.
Yeah.
Because the next morning when they're on their way to the castle, she's like, he's like, so, I'm not a priest. She's like, yeah, it's pretty obvious. But then that scene leads directly into they all are going to sit down and like watch TV. And I thought it was real interesting to watch Daryl's reaction, because at first he's like, oh, cool, this is great. And then you could tell that, the way Norman Reedus played it, it got very sad and somber, because it reminded him of, he and his brother watching TV as kids, which reminded him of his brother and reminded him of the before time and all that, and so it turned kind of somber and melancholy for him. And I thought that was a real interesting choice, And
it was probably some of the best Norman Reedus like face acting I've seen him do, because he really was like tickled pink at this whole thing, because the kids are like talking along with it. They know all the lines, of course.
They clearly have it memorized.
Oh yeah. So they and he's just tickled pink by the adorable kids sitting next to him, and it's a slow burn, his realization, and the smile just slowly fades. You can see he's thinking about Alice entirely, and he just gets he's getting like deep in his emotions. It's really well done. It's really well done.
Yeah, I agree. I thought that was great. And then they finished that scene up with a scene where he and Isabel end up sleeping in the same bed together. Which I thought was pretty telling of her, where she's just like, yeah, the bed's big enough for both of us, and he's just like, because he's like, I'll go sleep on the floor, and she's like, no, it's fine, and which I think that, to me, that was a little way to let us know, if we hadn't figured it out, that she's not like the greatest nun.
Well, and I think in that moment too, he's trying to be respectful, because he her as, whereas we were fortunate enough to get her backstory, so we know she's actually not a nun. She is just simply living as one.
Right.
I mean, unless there's a scene where we see she takes some kind of vows or whatever, but she's not a traditional nun. She has definitely lived some life being a nun. She was, a flesh and blood woman living her best life. So in her casual way of just being like, oh, there's plenty of room, reveals a lot and too.
So I thought that was real interesting, and they had a nice little chat there while they were lying in the bed. And again, it was a great scene between the two of them, and I like both of those actors. So yeah, I like that scene. I thought that was fun. I know we briefly talked on it, but I loved the sequence with the ambulance. It reminded me a lot of the Romero film Diary of the Dead.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember the opening scene when the news crew is outside the apartment building and the cops are there and the ambulance is there, and they're like wheeling, some domestic violence has just happened, and the guy's dead and the wife's dead, and they're wheeling him out, and then they reanimate it. It's sort of like the first moment, and it's all captured on the film. It kind of had that same kind of vibe, that the two girls come upon this ambulance and there's a policeman's motorcycle, and they're just on the side of the road and their lights are all flashing, but there's no people. And her first thought is really smart of like, hey, you know, like you said, they might have medicine, or they can look at you and tell you what, you know, how can we, you know, make you feel better, or, you know, give us some assistance here. This is a good thing to stop. And I agree. You absolutely do. And again, this is like day 1.5 of this, you know what I mean? And nobody really knows what's going on. And the way they did it, where they get out and she's like, hello, excuse me, hello. And then boom, you know, the ghouls are on them. And you're right. One ghoul grabs Lily's arm and she kind of yanks it away. It's very quick, right? You know, it's like, wow, you know, that ghoul was able to bite through like her coat and her shirt and take out a big chunk of her arm pretty quickly. I mean, it's like boom, boom, you know, and then she gets back in the car and they drive away and she has no reaction. She's not like, ah, or anything, you know, she's just like, yeah, I'm okay, you know, but you do see where it could have happened. But I really thought that was a creepy, cool scene, and it definitely gave me the Romero vibe. So I wanted to make sure I pointed that out, that I thought that was great. So
yeah, love it. I think if I look through your list and my list, I think we pretty much hit everything. You think so? I don't.
Yeah, I think so. I think, you know, we both picked the line that Daryl says, I think, to Isabel when, you know, he says you can't miss what you never had, because she's like saying,
I thought that was a great line.
It's like she's like lamenting how these children will have no memory or no idea of what the old world was like, and his kind of Daryl look at the world is like, yeah, you can't miss what you don't know. And I thought that was exactly. I thought that was a fun line. And then I think earlier I wrote down a line that Laurent and Sylvie are playing like a 20 questions kind of game, and he immediately turns it to whoever you're trying to, what it's like, she's like trying to get him to guess a person, and he's like, whoever it is, they're dead, because everybody we know except for the people in this wagon are dead. And it's very macabre, really. And then you know, he looks at Daryl and he goes, Monsignor Daryl, what kind of death would you prefer? And Daryl just without looking back goes, how about a quiet one?
Yeah. That's definitely someone who doesn't like being around kids, like precocious kids for too long. Sure.
But and the only thing that struck me about it is just like, but how long did he live and raise Judith? And, you know, granted, Judith is a much more mature kid than anyone else we've ever seen in the universe, but it just seemed to like, I'm like, really? You'd think that this version of Daryl would have a little more idea of how to deal with kids, because he raised one for several years.
Yeah, but there's such an element of Judith that raised herself, and with the responsibility of RJ and all the other kids in the settlement, you're right, she had so much more maturity. She just didn't, and Laurent has not been around other kids, so he doesn't know how to like sort of act in that moment. He doesn't know he's being an annoying kid because he doesn't know. He just hasn't had that exposure.
Right. So you're absolutely right. But anyway, I first of all, I thought it was a funny line, and I thought, you know, it definitely injected a little levity into this episode. And there are a couple moments throughout it where, you know, like when all the kids go nanu nanu and stuff. I thought that was kind of fun. Like that's their chosen way to say goodbye and hello. I'm like, all right, that's cool.
It was very cute. Very cute. All right.
But I think that's it.
Yeah, I think so too. We're going to go ahead, folks. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to discuss all of our listener feedback and talk about what's coming up on the podcast.
So please stick around, because we shall be right back.
The following is an emergency action message. Civil authorities have identified a biological threat that they deem credible. This threat could potentially affect the entire continental United States.
The dead are returning to life and attacking the living.
911, what's your emergency?
There's a man up bad and he's attacking another man. Looks like he's biting him, like on the arm.
The initial signs are puzzling, unclear.
Getting pulled out of their cars and thrown to the ground. It looks like the bus passengers are fighting their victims.
Soon, however, the reality is clear and undeniable.
The crisis involving the recently dead continues. Parliament today passed a law that requires all bodies of the recently deceased to be registered and turned
Toxic
over.
Bag Productions has captured the sounds of the zombie apocalypse and brought them to your gaming table. Background ambiences, zombie attacks, and radio transmissions that set the scene for your modern zombie adventure. Download MP3s from drivethrurpg.com or toxicbag.com.
Now there's about 20 of them out there.
What will we do?
Don't worry, we're safe in here. They'll never get in.
Why is it that in every zombie story, people always think that their safe haven is invulnerable?
I know. It's like, hello, the walkers are totally going to get in. You better get ready for it.
No! Diane, get behind me. No, it's not stopping.
Do something, Jack!
And another thing, how come nobody in a zombie story has ever seen a zombie story?
Do you know how much time in human life would be saved if just one person in the group was up on the genre?
What do we do?
Aim for the head.
What?
Aim for the head.
You heard them. Aim for the head.
Quick, Diane, I think we should try and fix the barricades.
I think we should listen to them.
Now, that's the first good idea they've had all episode.
I still don't think they're gonna make it.
Aim for the Head, a weekly podcast covering the hit AMC programs The Walking Dead and Fear the Walking Dead. Join hosts Dianna and Steve as they recap and discuss the latest episodes. Aim for the Head, available on iTunes. You can also follow them on Facebook.
Hey everybody, we are back. We're going to jump directly into our listener feedback that we got this week for episode 2. And I'm going to go ahead. We flipped a coin, and I'm going to start. So first up, we received some feedback via email from our international desk. Our pal Bev from Devon sent in an email. Hey, Bev, thanks so much for writing in as usual.
Hey, Bev.
And Bev wrote in and says, hi, guys. Well, that was another good episode. It feels there's been some real thought put into this story and its characters. However, there were a couple of things that let this episode down, so let's start with those. Okay. Why does Daryl keep getting captured by people with inferior skills to him? And why the hell didn't he just shoot that American guy? I know. As my husband pointed out, Daryl has killed people for less. I got nervous for Daryl when I heard the whistling, flashbacks to Negan, and even more concerned when I realized he'd been captured by a gang of kids. We all know how that ended last time. That's true. I enjoyed the flashbacks of Paris falling. Wouldn't it be great to see more countries dealing with the outbreak? Seeing the backstories of new characters really helps us get invested in them, meaning we care if they live or die. The birth was traumatic, but essential for us to understand why the nuns believe the child is something special, although he's beginning to annoy me a little.
Me too.
It certainly feels that the team has really put some thought behind this project, and I'm looking forward to seeing the next episode and hearing your thoughts on them all. Bev, writing from very stormy Devon. Thanks for writing in, Bev, as usual. Yeah. She got some great thoughts, and she's really sort of in line with some of the things that we were saying about Daryl and, you know, stupid Daryl, just not getting it.
But it's newbie Daryl. It's like Daryl from Daryl from episode 2 when he first showed up, right? When he was all short hair and what'd you do to my brother? You know, I mean that's kind of
he's day one Daryl.
Yeah, you know, where you're like, really? Because again, as we've said many times, he knows better. So you know, you're right on the money there, Bev. I think we are in lockstep on that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks for writing in, Bev. We look forward to hearing your thoughts on episode 3 next week.
Yep. And hopefully the weather will improve a little in Devon and it won't be very stormy because that's never good. Open. All right. So moving along, our next piece of feedback came from our pal Alma Contreras. Hello, Alma.
Hey, Alma.
And she sent this via the Facebook space, and she said, "Welp, I watched as soon as it dropped. Let me just start with what I liked. I really liked the flashbacks of when this started through Isabel's eyes. I also liked the preschool kids and their setup. I felt bad for them losing their teacher. Funny how they really pulled on my heartstrings." And then she has the little emoji of, you know, the little face. And then she goes, what are the freaking odds you run into another American out in post-apocalyptic France? Which is what we said. She goes, LOL, pretty good in the Walking Dead universe, LOL. And yeah, it's right. It's like the odds are astronomical, but in Walking Dead, nothing is out of the question.
Small odds,
right?
very small odds.
Exactly. Take the under there.
Yeah, exactly.
Then she goes on to say, so Laurent is Isabel's nephew and obviously not the, and I'm using air quotes, Messiah. And she has the emoji of the, rolling your eyes. She goes, okay, this is what bugged me. This is basically the Last of Us story, but the Walking Dead version in Francois, Francais. So again, something we mentioned quite a bit in the last segment.
Yes.
And she said LOL. And then she goes, Laurent is what born after his mama turned, so that's what makes him special. Laurent was born after his mama turned, and that's what makes him special. I just don't know how I feel about this story trope. I look forward to hearing y'all's thoughts. And I think, we kind of echoed some of that sentiment that, we've kind of seen this show before. And it's unfortunate that they obviously were planning this for a while. And, in the meantime, Last of Us came out and it was really good. And we've kind of already gone down this road. But I think, to kind of bring it back to Daryl, that ship has sailed. And there's nothing we can do about it. This is the show we get. And so there you go. I think it's a little similar to when the Knuckleheads came up with their nuclear reactor story, and it came out literally like a month after Chernobyl came out. And, anyone who watched Chernobyl just kind of snickered at their idea of science and radiation, So, but again, we're just going to have to live with it. As much as it is kind of Last of Us Part 2 or again, the redo, whatever, I'm still enjoying it. So hopefully you guys are too.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So anyway, thanks a lot, Alma.
Yeah. So next up, we got an email from our pal Lisa Dupre, who we haven't heard from in a while. Hello, Lisa.
Hello. Bonjour, Lisa.
Bonjour. Lisa starts off by saying, bonjour, mes amis. And she says, sorry I didn't get a chance to write in last week. I got bogged down with some work stuff. So before I dive into thoughts on episode 2, I hope you'll indulge a couple of thoughts I had about episode 1. Absolutely. If there is a character from modern TV capable of carrying a show with some grunts and Clint Eastwood level scowling, it is Daryl Dixon. When I first heard that the show was going to be set in France, I assumed that AMC would cheap out and shoot it in Canada. Imagine my delight when I saw the actual French countryside. Even in post-apocalyptic ruin, it is unmistakable. I'm just trying to control my giddiness at the thought of them walking to Paris, a city, by the way, that is filled with bodies buried under it, even without a zombie apocalypse, so that's going to be interesting. I also love that they spent the money on French casting. There's some really solid actors on this show. One of the other things that had me worried was the gun problem. There are not a lot of guns in France. Good point. Being one of those civilized countries that thinks people one of those civilized countries that thinks people being able to easily shoot school children would be bad. So I was dreading seeing how that might go. I was delighted to see that most people have the only kind of guns you can have in France outside of the military. Collector's items, muskets, dueling pistols, the occasional service revolver from World War II. It's awesome. They even showed Daryl trying to use a World War II handgun, and it jammed almost immediately. Solid acknowledgement of the world this show is built in. Although, speaking of World War II, what war was that grandfather supposedly fighting in alongside Americans? Because my grandfather was a World War II veteran, and if he was still alive, he'd be over 110 years old now. Grandpa was of French descent and for his age, but even when still alive, I think he would have struggled to take out a young guy in his prime with a walking stick. You guys and I differed on a couple of points. Point number 1, I like Laurent. I think nerddom is a little too quick to hate on smart kid characters. As a community, maybe we need to examine the self-hate that comes with immediately disliking the Wesley Crushers and Laurents of our fandoms before they've had a chance to prove themselves one way or the other. Smart, skinny little kids who are good at math are our people, not the enemy. I can't remember from last week. I don't remember. Did we say we disliked him? I don't think I dislike Laurent. I think it's unfortunate because
I was annoyed with him because I was just like, again, a smart mouth little kid, just what we need.
Well, yeah, and I think it's also, unfortunately, it's not for. Yes, we can control how we react, etc. But I think AMC is the one that's pushing you in that direction. They're pushing you in the direction of this kid is going to be annoying, but I think it's going to pay off because I think we're already getting there with like these moments, heartstring moments. I already feel all kinds of sympathy for this poor kid, you know, the life that he's led, all of these liars that are around him. You know, and like I said, he just wanted to stay with those kids at the school and he can't because he's the Messiah. So I think Lisa, I think if we're patient, I think AMC is doing this deliberately so that when we get the payoff, the emotional payoff later, I think it will engender a lot of sympathy for him because we will have seen him sort of go through this emotional journey and then something's going to happen like we were talking about where he's going to find out the truth and then we will, of course, have this sympathy or empathy for him in that moment. So, but I agree. I've seen a lot of stuff online that say people are annoyed by him and she makes a fair point. So there it is. Number 2, she says, the acid zombies bugged the heck out of me. I'm all for finding new variants, and there's clearly some funky experimenting going on in this world. But how exactly does a rotting body carry around acid strong enough to melt living skin, but leave dead skin intact and able to walk around? I know, zombies aren't real either, but chemistry is, and flesh melting acid is not selective about which flesh it melts. It
was an alien.
Hush. I can't imagine an explanation, air quotes, for how that works that won't bug me even more. Well, you're probably going to get one.
Yeah, I think you will.
Yeah. There was one thing that I felt nitpicky about, and it made me laugh. Daryl, quote unquote, borrows weapons from the nuns, but then later when the nuns are arming themselves, one of them grabs a crossbow. Daryl saw a crossbow and he just left it there? That's as out of character as seeing him with clean hair. So light and bouncy. Who knew? All right. That's enough of episode 1. She goes on to say, okay, so episode 2. Of course the hoarding dirtbag stealing food and medicine from children is an American. Of course he is. She's not wrong. Talking about how him getting back to Texas is more important than French children having food. If the show was made by Europeans, I'd be insulted, but it isn't, so we're stuck with feeling the truth of it. Speaking of truth, I like the fact that this show is coming down solidly on the idea that lying to children is wrong, sort of the anti-Last of Us in that regard. Laurent finding out that the nuns he trusted have been lying to him and coddling him his whole life is interesting to watch. I also kind of love the way the other children laughed when Laurent repeated the obvious lies the nuns told him. Oh yeah, kid, that donkey is totally on a farm eating apples. No way the zombie bait actually got bit. I roll. I love that these kids are kind. They don't make fun of him. They don't call him stupid. They laugh because they can't help themselves. But ultimately, they are kind to him about it. They know it's not his fault adults lied to him. It's nice to see a group of kids who didn't immediately turn feral when the adults went away. The whole Lord of the Flies thing gets old. I was a little worried when they started howling, but it turns out that's just them being happy. I'm not nuts about the quote-unquote chosen one messianic storylines in general, but I will say the creators and writers of the show are dropping some nice breadcrumbs relating Laurent to his more famous predecessor. There's a couple of good ones here and there, like having the nuns recite the prayer of St. Joseph, a protector of children, because Joseph raised and protected a son that was not his. Having Daryl kneeling while that prayer is recited around him did not feel like a coincidence. My favorite one so far is that Jesus's mother's name was Elizabeth, and the French version of that name was Isabel. Close but no cigar, Steve. Wink, wink. So you almost had the mom right. You almost did. You're close. She's blood related. She's blood related.
Yep.
I have a little question though. Presumably the kids divided their guests up into 2 available sleeping arrangements. Seems like putting Laurent and Daryl in one bed and Sylvie and Isabel in another would make a little more sense than let's give the double bed to the Father Daryl and one of the nuns. They're kids, they're not stupid. I'm really enjoying that series so far, and I'm glad Daryl found another crossbow by episode 2. I like a little character continuity. Love and B says, Lisa Dupre. Dupre. And she makes a fair point about the sleeping arrangements. It may just be that maybe Sylvie is very connected to Laurent, and maybe she thought, he would be more, I don't know, happier.
Well,
and maybe they already shared a room. Maybe he shared a room with Sylvie, because in one of the things we saw in the flashback was that Sylvie was also a child taken in by that abbey.
Yeah.
Was raised by the nuns, so they have a lot more in common than previously. So maybe they have a bond that just hasn't been explored just yet.
Yeah, I was gonna say they kind of have that like almost brother sister thing, going on. Even though she was kind of technically a sister, but I that you're right, because we do see Sylvie and she's like 9 or 10. When Laurent is born. So yeah, it's very possible that she probably helped raise him, care for him, babysit him, do all the stuff that, the teenage girls like to do when they're kind of playing and so on. So yeah, I could totally see that. I also think the point she made about the kids was something that I had written down on one of my first drafts, which was I also enjoyed the fact that kids kind of tease him a little bit when they're playing, but it's not malicious. It's like kids on the playground,
right?
And they certainly poke holes in his story because they're hearing it and they're hearing it with children's ears about how ridiculous it is. But after that, it's not like they tell him to get lost. He's still one of the kids, and come on, let's go play. And they're welcoming and inviting to him. They're just kind of, like she said, they're kind of giggling at his story because to them it's obviously a bunch of treacle. So yeah, I agree with her. I liked that. I liked the fact that here we have it's kind of ironic, I suppose, in a way, that the first group that we have met in the Walking Dead universe that's not psychopathic killers are all children.
Yeah.
So yeah. Anyway.
All right. Well, thanks for writing in, Lisa. We hope to hear from you more regularly.
Don't get stuck up at work. Jeez.
Yeah. Whatever.
Oh my God. Whatever. Bonjour.
Bonjour.
All right. So thanks a lot, Lisa. It was amazing feedback and it's so much great information, and it was a lot of stuff I think is, again, right. We are definitely in agreement with like 99% of what you put in there. So yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, so moving along, we got another piece of feedback from our pal Karen, not related to Lauren Cohen, and this came again via the Facebook. And she starts out by going, "Still rocking those suspenders." It was funny when Isabel said Father Daryl doesn't know French after so long because Americans. I was in Paris years ago trying to order food at a cafe with my husband, and the guy literally shook his head and muttered, "Americans." Yes, it is. We are the douchebags of the planet. There's no doubt. She goes on to say, "That girl sure sounds just like an American when she's not speaking French." Yeah, well, I guess if you put braids in a girl's hair, it makes them look like more of a warrior.
Yes.
Laurent wants to stay with his new friends who don't even like him. Yeah, I think they do, but I see your point. And she goes, "Sounds about right for a 12-year-old. That also sounds like the nuns let him win at hide and seek a lot." Yes.
Yes.
This episode was okay. I don't know why they don't just take all the redneck, I don't know why they don't take all of that redneck stuff. He's pretty dead now. Cheers. Yeah, I agree. There's a whole fully functioning castle that you guys could go move into with a moat. And again, all of the hoarded stuff from everywhere in the vicinity is there. Right. It's kind of like if you're looking for a new place for your group to live, and you find a shopping mall that has like everything, including a fully functioning.
You don't just keep moving.
Yeah. You stay there, right? You wouldn't just be like, well, someday we'll find a place. No, you did. Yeah. So yeah, you're right. Certainly, that raised my eyebrows a little too. Of like, really, we're just gonna leave the castle? Okay. But again, what are you gonna do? Write your own show.
Yeah.
Anyway, amazing feedback as always, Karen. Thank you so much for writing in. And I think we both agree. We look forward to hearing what you think of next week and the Rockin' Suspenders.
Yeah. Well, we'll see if he still has them. He might get rid of them. I mean, he doesn't have a belt, though, so who knows?
That's true. Got to keep your pants up.
Got to keep your pants up, even in the apocalypse. Next up, we heard from our pal a little late in the game. We were already recording, and I saw your feedback, Teresa, but I grabbed it and threw it in there. Whew, just barely by the seat of your pants.
Right under the wire.
Yeah, by the seat of your pants being held up by suspenders.
Suspender, I see what you did there.
The suspenders, right?
Nice.
So Teresa wrote in via the Facebook, and very short and to the point. She says, I loved this episode so much. This series just keeps getting better as we go. And then 3, I think, ghost emojis?
It's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah, let's make that bigger. Yeah, it's a ghost.
It's a ghost.
3 ghost emojis.
Nice.
So
I guess that means love.
Yeah, love or getting better. 3 ghosts is better than 2. I
don't know. I don't speak ghost.
I can't answer those questions. I don't speak ghost either. Teresa will let us know though. She'll write in again next week. Thanks for writing in, Teresa. We're glad you're enjoying the show.
Yeah,
we are
absolutely.
too.
Well, we're getting all of our enjoyment out now. So when fear starts up, we can just go back to, boy, does this show suck.
Yeah, we're getting our enjoyment in before the true suck begins. Yes. So speaking of joy, coming up on the podcast, we'll be covering something next week, but we hadn't mentioned, if you've been paying attention to the numbers at the beginning of the podcast, next week is our 300th episode. What?
Whoa, now that can't be right. Because
it is.
I've only been here for like 180 episodes, so.
Yes, but there were episodes before you came. I hate to tell you.
No, there weren't. That's just not true. Revisionist history. We've erased all that stuff. But goodness. No, that is quite an accomplishment. I'm very excited to see what you're going to do to celebrate next week. So that's gonna be
I'm going to buy a cake and eat it here at my house.
Will it be a French cake?
Oh, can I get a cake made out of crepes? Crepes? Or maybe I'll get a cake made out of croissant.
Oh, I think you should get a cake that is shaped like the Eiffel Tower.
That's not a bad idea. Yeah. So I'm not sure what I have planned for next week. Maybe we'll just talk about the show and things like that.
All right.
Yeah, so next week's the 300th episode. If there's something you guys want to say, if you want to write in with thoughts on the show or anything special you want to say, we will include whatever you want to say about it being our 300th damn episode. That's what I wrote in my notes. Next week is our 300th damn episode under the headline of OMG.
OMG.
In our notes. So yeah, crazy 300th episode. So in our 300th episode next week, I don't know if you've heard me mention, but it's our 300th episode. We will be covering Walking Dead Daryl Dixon, episode number 3. Oh, more French. Paris sera toujours Paris, which is Paris will always be Paris.
Yep.
What'd you say? No?
I went, yep.
Oh, I thought you said no, and I'm like,
no.
How would you know if Paris won't be Paris? Are you holding out on me?
Here's looking at you, kid. We'll always have Paris.
Always have Paris. The description is only able to find one really sort of small one before we started recording. The group's arrival in Paris brings help from old friends and attention from new foes. So, how about that?
Yeah, I saw the scenes for next week, and yeah, it looks like they get there, so it's not not a lot of obstacles on the road from where they started, but I think they're going to bring back the ship people, and we're going to see the ship people meet up with Cordon or whatever the guy's name is, Tattoo Face, and because he's going to join forces with them at some point. To help them hunt down this Daryl Dixon, type thing. So yeah, it looks really interesting because we're going to get to see a big French city, Paris, and we'll probably get to see lots of the landmarks, and they're all going to be, you know, apocalypsed up. So we'll see the Arc de Triomphe and the Eiffel Tower and the Louvre and all that stuff. And so yeah, it should be fun. I'm looking forward to see what we're going to get to see and what they're going to show us. So
yeah,
pretty cool.
Yeah, I agree. I haven't seen a lot of images come out of next week yet. It was only one particular site that had even this little write-up, and it was just a site that said that it was via a press release from AMC. And I don't know if that was like late in the day, because there was also no description on AMC or on Wikipedia. So AMC, IMDb, or Wikipedia, none of them had it. But
maybe they're playing it close to the vest or something.
Maybe. And as a reminder, obviously we've mentioned it a couple of times with, in our voice, but Fear the Walking Dead is coming back on the 22nd, and we will of course be covering it. So when it comes right up against Daryl Dixon, so when the show ends on whatever that Sunday is before, the very next Sunday, Fear the Walking Dead will be back, and will be 6 episodes, and then done, stick a fork in it.
Yay!
And I mentioned last week that Norman Reedus's motorcycle show, Ride, is back, and I haven't had a chance to watch last night's episode just yet, but it is Josh Holloway, who I adore from Lost, and he had a nice short stint on Yellowstone and was fantastic on that. So I'm very much looking forward to watching that. I'll try and squeeze it in either tonight or tomorrow. But folks, looks like he's got some really interesting folks this season. So I hope other people are watching it and enjoying it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Anything else we need to discuss before we wrap this up?
The only thing I would just point out is that we're getting to that, the greatest time of the year, and a lot of the streaming and cable networks are putting up their Halloween month-long movie marathons that they're going to be doing. I know AMC has one, and I believe their information is up. I think Hulu's going to do one again. So just kind of, if you're in the mood for horror, and, let's be honest, who isn't, just, start looking around at your providers, at the guys and channels that you go to, because a lot of them are posting what movies they're going to show and when they're going to show them. And you can kind of start making your plans of, I always wanted to see that movie, or I love that movie, I want to watch it again, that type of stuff. So, and now is the time, because now we're getting ready and starting October 1, which is, 11 days from now. That's when it'll run, and it'll run all through October. So check it out.
And keep a look at any local theaters or whatever, because sometimes you might see even in the most rural of areas, you might see some, re-releases just for the holiday, just because of Halloween. Small movie houses trying to make a couple bucks might rerun something fun over the weekend because of it being Halloween month. So keep your eyes out. I know Steve and I have been watching for Music Box in Chicago, has a couple of things on their roster that we're looking at going to see. So whatever city you're in, take a peek there, and maybe you'll be able to see something on the big screen that you've never seen on the big screen before.
There you go. Absolutely.
Keep your eyes open. Keep your eyes open. All right. Well, that's going to do it. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, let's be honest, because, there's going to be very little,
of
programming
else
to watch. Yeah. So you might as well go to the movies and see an old movie. Why not?
Yeah, because even if things get resolved, it's going to take a while for new content to hit. No time like the present to rehash and look at some old horror movies that you haven't seen in a while. So there. Absolutely. All right. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up for this week. Thanks so much for listening. As always, we're going to talk to you again next week and cover episode 3, just as we discussed. But until then, as always, I'm Dianna.
And I am Steve.
Don't forget to always aim for the head.
Because the body shots, they do not work, you ignorant American. To send us an email, write us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is @AFTH Podcast.
Pictures and video are always welcome at our Instagram account, Aim for the Head Podcast, all one word. But the best way to keep in touch with us is to just like our Facebook page to get all of our updates in your feed.
Good B-roll. This has been Sports Ball with
Sports
your
Ball.
hosts, Dianna the Dragon Driscoll and Steve Give Me the Truth Baldwin.
There it is. That's it. That's the B-roll stinger right there.
Yeah,
I don't need to search for anything else.
There
It's
you go.
at,
Just mark
where
it.
are we? 4 minutes and 40 seconds. Thank you.
All right.